Hello class, this is Jim Turner, your professor, and I'm bringing you the second of 3 videos, which we call our cheat sheet review, as it summarizes some of the things we've learned in class about financial statements. First, I want to talk about the various types of financial statements. The general term we often use is a statement of financial position. Now, that particular statement is a statement that's done at a point in time. In the private sector, that's called a balance sheet. It could be done at the end of the year. It can be done at the end of a month, the end of a quarter. It can even be done on a daily basis, but it's a snapshot taken at a point in time. The nonprofit sector refers to their statement of financial position as the statement of financial position. It uses the exact same general terminology, which sometimes drives me crazy, but that's okay. In the public sector, in the GASB 34, they use the term statement of net position. That's the current term that it's called. The older statements were referred to as the statement of net assets. And then finally, in the public sector, the traditional public sector, it also uses the term balance sheet. Now, there's a slight difference. In the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and in the GASB 34, you're measuring all of your assets, both long-term and short-term, as well as all of your liabilities. In the public sector, you're only focusing on the short-term assets and the short-term liabilities. And again, this goes along with the concept of stewardship. Are the public's monies being used appropriately? The second set of financial statements are referred to as operating statements. In the private sector, there's an income statement. Unlike the other statements we just reviewed, which were done at a point in time, these cover a period of time. So again, it could be the period of a year, a quarter, a month, or even a day. The income statement shows revenues and expenses in the private sector, and the difference, they hope, is a profit or net income. In both the nonprofit sector and in the GASB 34 statements in the public sector, the statement is called the statement of activities. And again, it's going to show revenues and expenses and then the difference. And finally, in the traditional public sector statement, they use the world's longest name, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And again, we're seeing that term expenditures. Whenever you see the term expenditures or the term fund balance, you know you're dealing with a traditional public sector statement. Third statement that you'll often see in the private sector will be a cash flow statement, because cash is always important. The nonprofit sector the nonprofit sector also uses a cash flow statement. The GASB 34 doesn't have a third statement. They only deal with the 2 statements that we previously reviewed. The public sector traditional statement has a budgetary comparison statement, again following the notion of stewardship, helping you to find out and to determine if the public's monies were spent appropriately. The nonprofit sector has one other statement known as a statement of functional expenses. That's important for that sector. The accounting equation is very important for you to understand. In the private sector, the statements are set up so the assets equal the liabilities plus the owner's equity. Now, the way I really think about it is that assets minus liabilities equals owner's equity. And if you look at those 2 statements, it only takes a little bit of algebra to go from one to the other. The nonprofit sector, the accounting equation is assets equals liabilities plus net assets. So here, the difference between your liabilities and your assets is referred to as the net asset. In the public sector, GASB 34, the newer statements, it's assets equals liabilities plus net position. And then finally, in the traditional public sector statement, you have assets equals the liabilities plus the fund balance. Or the way I like to think about it, when you subtract the value of your liabilities from the value of your assets, the residual or the difference is fund balance. And remember, for these statements, you're dealing with only the short-term assets and liabilities, whereas in the other statements, it covers both short and long-term liabilities and assets. This was the summary that we reviewed in video number 1, which covered who governs. It covered the measurement, focus, and basis of accounting, and when revenues and expenses or expenditures are recorded. Here's the summary for what we just reviewed, covering the various statements, as well as the accounting equation used in each of the 4 sectors. And then finally, the third video is going to cover 3 specialized transactions and show how they differ between the private sector and the public sector. That's it. Good luck.